Um, Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining in for this session with us today. Thank you so much, Mr. Pornakosh, for joining us and agreeing to do this for us. Um, Everyone, Mr. Pornakosh is a proud alumnus from our GNIT program, which has been our oldest program that NIT has been offering to its students. It's a flagship program. And Mr. Porno Ghosh is the presiding chief information officer of the Uno Minda Group currently. And he has over 28 years of expertise. And we are really thankful to him that he agreed to share his experiences with us. And for all of you who've joined in the session, please make sure that um, take advantage of this time that he's investing for us and ask questions. So, all of you who have joined us on Zoom, as well as people who are joining us on Facebook Live, thank you so much. And over to you, Mr. Porno. Thank you.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Divyanshi, thank you for the introduction, and thank you NIIT for giving me this opportunity to interact with students. Uh, I think I was also one time an NIIT alumni, as Divyanshi mentioned rightly, around 26 years back, and I was from the first batch of GNIIT, which was launched in India at that time. So proud to be along with amongst the same alumni, same fraternity and same think thought process and people. So I'll just start my session. Just a brief background of myself. I represent a company called Uno Minda Group, which is around 8,000 crore turnover group, which works in automotive domain in India and in the European and in Southeast Asian market. And we have around 28 product lines or business lines, as we call. And we basically manufacture various automotive products and supply to all the OEMs means the car manufacturers like Maruti, Tata, Mahindra, or all other Japanese and German and American OEMs manufacturers. So this is our primary business line. I have 29 plus years of experience, and I'm in the 30th year now in my career. So many of your students' age will also be less than 30, I believe. And I'll request all of you to just keep yourself in mute. I'll try to finish the session in 40 minutes or 45 minutes or so. I'll try to finish it fast. And mm, then I'll expect some question and answers. If somebody's having anything, we'll definitely be interested to take something which is possible to answer within the time frame. And the rest, you can send me a mail through Divyanshi. I'll try to answer through mail itself. So let me start. Today's topic is industrial IoT and the benefit of adopting Industry 4.0 in India. Uh, I sent a synopsis earlier, so hence I believe this was already shared earlier with all of you. So basically, why India needs, or rather, why the world needs, long-term competitiveness at the global stage. India is also, fighting in the world global stage at this point of time. India wants to become a large manufacturing hub like China, and we want to compete with all the global players. Uh, then why Industry 4.0 is important? What are the benefits? Basically, talking about the industrial IoT point of view, and I'll also share in details about it later on. Then today we have a data-driven economy where most of the things are driven by data. We call data is a new oil, and how it really works and how it really helps in evolving the business decisions and improves the revenue on a larger perspective. So this is the era of digital transformation, where you see data, information, communication devices have cluttered the space. We everybody use iPads, phones, smartphones, computers, laptop. Then you have the OT devices, for example, OTT devices, such as television, smart televisions, and many smart devices are there in and around us. So information is cluttered, data is cluttered, lot of information, lot of space, lot of distraction as well. So also we call this as a 3D economy. 3D is data, disruption, and distraction. So distraction is something which impacts our education, impacts our job, impacts everything, impacts our concentration. That is how the current economy or current transformation is going on. Second is, the days are not far when the robot is going to talk to another robot. We call cobots or something like that, which is communication bots. These robots or these cobots actually do not need any human interface, so they can easily talk to each one of them and send instruction to each one of them. There are many factories in the world where you do not need any people to drive any kind of manufacturing or any kind of process. Each and everything is handled by the robots, and they can talk to each other. They can transfer job to one to another. They don't need any kind of support for anybody else to transact with, especially the humans. Then if we see there was one time when we used to look at this. Just a second, let me just put my pointer on, then it will be easier. So there was days when used to see this, physical maps we used to buy from the shops. When I was in Kolkata long days back, we used to buy some books or some charts or some maps like that. Today everything is digital. You open the Google Map, you see each and every map with world map, India map, Delhi map, Mumbai map, any map you see. You can easily digitally scroll. So this is a change which is happening. The world is now in your hands. Everything is in the mobile phone. Whether you need food, you need banking, you need services, you need healthcare, you need communication, for mails, for communication, communicating, for collaborating, like example for Zoom and other things. Also you can easily handle things on your own. And likewise, the entire world has become very narrow to us. There were time when used to communicate, when you to see when where if I have to reach UK, or if I have to reach US to capture some information, we had to travel 24 hours or 12 hours. Now everything is on the spot. Any event happening in America or Africa or any part of Australia right now, you get to know it immediately. So each and everything is there in your mobile today. These are the 11 technologies, and this study has been done by A.T. Kearney, which is one of the large global organizations in consulting space. They have done this study that these are the 11 technologies which will be ruling the world in next 2 decades. Which are those 11? Number one is IoT. Number two, advanced analytics, artificial intelligence and machine learning, advanced robotics, additive manufacturing, which is nothing but 3D printing, augmented and virtual reality,
वो आज
blockchain,
ऊपर एक है वो रिकॉर्ड करने को डाल देना।
digital payments, then application programming interface, nothing but APIs, which connects one application to another, RFID and sensors, and robotics process automation. So these are the 11 technologies which are going to disrupt the entire, world. Rather, the people, process, and technology, all the three areas, elements, in next 2 decades. There is another study done by a reputed organization who found out which are the top two requirements for next 1 year. And one of these is analytics and data science. Second is mobile or online development. Look at what CIOs are saying. 59 CIOs are saying these are the top two requirements. And, total 850 people were interviewed or surveyed, and this is a result which came out. There is a 6 CXO study, which is nothing but CIOs and CEOs and chief marketing officers, then chief strategy officers. Many people were studied, and they told us, or that they sent the information that creating new business or tapping new profit pool will be the major reason for digital transformation. It is not just to embrace technology. Today, NIIT teaches a lot of technologies to you, but technology is not for the sake of learning. It is also for the sake of business. So digital transformation is required just to ensure that we need to tap in a lot of new business opportunities. So digital is not a tech upgrade. It is a new business model. People have to understand. Many people think digital is technology. It is nice, fancy mobile phone. Access Ola, Uber, or something like that, or I access some Zomato. I access some banking applications. This is not the reason of this technology. The major, the major advantage, the major advantage is. I will request all of you to please keep yourself in mute. The major advantage is creating new business opportunities, tapping new business models. That is what we need digital transformation. This is the proliferation of data. We always say data is the new oil. Or one time the people who were producing oils and selling oils across the globe were the richest countries, like example Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Kuwait, and many other countries like that. But tomorrow oil is not going to be the crude oil which we're talking about. The new oil is basically data. So the proliferation of data, if you see whatever data you're using in your mobile, in your servers, in your laptops, in your iPads, or in offices, in organizations, everywhere in the cloud, the total proliferation is going to be around 175 zettabyte. And I have given a calculation here. One zettabyte is around 1000 exabytes, and one exabyte is around 1 billion terabyte, and then 1 trillion gigabytes. So just imagine the kind of data proliferation happens. So if you see from 2010 to 2025, in 15 years, the growth has happened phenomenally, and each and every year we are doubling the data growth in terms of proliferation of the data. These are the drivers for digital, and we have to see what global demands are talking about. The drivers are basically slow global economic growth, then increase urbanization and developing worldwide growth, geopolitical instability, end market consumption trends. The trends are changing. People buying are changing. People are going for service based economy from a buying based economy. Circular economic lowering consumption, the increasing competing materials, and the impacts will be slower, more volatile, medium term growth. I believe you people all know what is VUCA: volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So the markets are becoming more VUCA, especially during this COVID times. We have seen many changes are happening very fast. People are losing jobs, jobs are getting changed, people are working from home, things are getting driven by the home. The e-commerce has grown phenomenally high, and many of the sectors are dying down, and many of the sectors are growing. So I think this whole change is happening. Industries, if you see, the resource scarcity will be there, and remoteness will be the need. So what we are today doing, all are joining webinars. We are not physically meeting each other. We're all joining through webinars. We're all joining through online sessions, online meetings, and stuff like that. There's a huge competition going to happen, and you don't know who is your competition. There was one time when Hindustan Lever used to know who are their competition. It was few companies, Reckitt Benckiser, or Procter and Gamble, or Dabur, or few other companies like that. Today, Hindustan Lever's competition is Ramdev Baba, Patanjali. Tomorrow somebody else will come. So who comes when? And you know what the growth of Ramdev Baba is? In 5 years' time, they have grown 10,000 crores. Unbelievable growth. Nobody knows. And they became competition to Hindustan Levers. So this is a change going to happen. Then the aging workforce is a major problem. Most of the developed countries like UK, USA, Japan, they have aged workforce. So they need young workforce, which are not there. Then the another issue is the government and society were talking about resource nationalism. Means, example, everybody is talking about protective economy. Like Trump is telling, okay, we'll reduce the number of visas. UK is telling, I want to do Brexit. Russia is telling, I don't want to send data outside the country. China is already having regulations like that. India government is coming up with data regulation. Europe has already gone for GDPR. So all these changes are happening globally, which are actually changing the entire landscape very differently. Today, your Gmail may be residing in US data. Tomorrow, it may happen that your Gmail data only resides in India. It cannot be sent outside. Today, the regulation in banking is you cannot send the banking data outside. Tomorrow, it may happen that the banking data only has to reside in your city. It may be in your home. So nobody knows. Those the changes are happening very, very fast. So these are the drivers for the change in digital. And then digital is, again, I told earlier, it is not a technological change. It's basically new driver for business. Please understand, it's a new business model. If earlier we had channel sales, earlier we had e-commerce sale, now digital is a new way of doing business. So this has to be kept in mind very clearly. And ultimately, digital disruption also brings innovation and sustainability. So if I have digital, I need to innovate, I need to continuously innovate. You know, the startup ecosystem in India, we have 70,000 plus startups in India, and who are working, and there are many startups who are doing brilliant job across the across the board in every industry. And this also brings you sustainability. If you don't innovate, you're going to be perished. You know the stories of Kodak, you know the stories of Nokia, you know the story of many other companies who have not survived because they did not do any innovation, they did not saw any innovation, they did not thought about innovation, so they died. Now let's slowly move into the IoT space, because I just gave you the background for the digital, because IoT is part of digital. So if you see in an enterprise digital transformation, there are five main facets. Especially, I'm talking about manufacturing at this point of time. One is a smart factory, which we call it smart manufacturing. Then second is a smart supply chain. Third is a smart process. It can be HR process, finance process, or any other process in the organization. Fourth is the smart people, and fifth is smart IT. So smart IT is why it is in the central location, because smart IT is going to connect all these elements of smart factories, smart supply chain, smart people, and smart process, and then they will bring the element of digital transformation. And looking at the maturity of the enterprises, there will be some people will be in the nascent stage, who will be just crawling at this point of time. They just focus on transactions and executions. Second will be the emerging people who are improving, where there is efficiency and inward focus activities are there. Third will be robust, who have functional orientation and cross functional integration. And fourth will be digital, who will be speeding ahead to compete in the global phenomena. What we are talking about is, in future, all organization has to work in this leading space, which will give us added advantage in competing in the global market. Please understand one thing: in this new, after post COVID era, manufacturing will be a key transformational subject, which will change our country to a different, whether we talk about Atmanirbhar Bharat, we talk about global to local to vocal and all this stuff. So everything has to be driven by matured and right kind of technologies with right manufacturing capabilities. We have to compete with China, we have to compete with Vietnam, we have to compete with Indonesia, Thailand. There are many competitors available in the whole market, so we have to compete with all of them. We jump into the subject called Industry 4.0. So in Industry 4.0, as you know, in 1784, Industry 1.0 came, which was specially mechanizing and steam power. We all know about the steam, engine, which was there in India as well, few years back. Now mostly it is now diesel or electrical. So this steam was first invented in 1784, which we talk about the Industry 1.0. France and Germany was key for this initiatives, and they used to lead post French Revolution in 1790. It happened in France, and then as well as in Germany. Then came Industry 2.0, which was specially talking about electrical energy, where the electrical energy was converting into motion and other in automation in the entire industrial sphera. Then came Industry 3.0, which is around 1969, where automation, computers, and electronics tried to embed with each other, and they tried to talk with each other. It started with Germany, and then US, and then Britain, and then it came down to the Asian countries as well. Currently, if you see, India is currently in this Industry 3.0, and we are slowly moving towards this Industry 4.0, which I'll come back later on, where which are the stakeholders who are working on this. So Industry 4.0 is nothing but cyber physical systems, Internet of Things, and networks. So this is what is the game changer for tomorrow, and then we all want to embark on the journey of Industry 4.0. There are several technologies which will be part of Industry 4.0. Example, mobile devices, Internet of Things, location detection technologies, which is nothing but, we call it geo tagging and geo fencing. Then advanced human machine interface, which is called HMI, authentication and fraud detection, 3D printing, smart sensors, big data analytics, and advanced algorithms, including AI and ML. Then we have multi-level customer interaction and customer profiling, augmented reality and wearables, virtual reality, and cloud computing. Industry 4.0 also has four areas of interventions. One is the connectivity of computing power, analytics and intelligence, human machine interface, and digital physical transformation. If you see, IoT falls under this area of connectivity and computing power, along with knowledge digitization. Then comes predictive analytics and machine learning and AI. Then comes wearables, augmented reality, and advanced human interface. And then comes advanced robotics and additive manufacturing. All these four together forms the modern digital technology, or a modern digital factory, or a smart factory, what we call about. IoT also comes in two areas. One is the industrial IoT, second is the consumer IoT. Industrial IoTs are like heavy machinery, interfaces, transportation, smart cities. These are the examples of industrial IoT. Then automation, factories, and healthcare also falls under industrial IoT. In the consumer space, we have wearables, phones, televisions, appliances, home monitoring, home automation. You can see a photograph of the shoe. So nowadays people are also wearing shoes which are IoT enabled. You can see when your sole is going to be over and you need a replacement of your shoe, and this information will directly go to the Nike or Adidas factory, and they can ship you a new shoe altogether. Same applies for watches and mobiles and other stuff. Consumer IoT growth, if you look at the growth across the globe, so it is going to jump from $46 billion to $104 billion by 2023. So for 5 years, the growth is around double. This is consumer IoT. For industrial IoT, as I already shared, we have factory manufacturing, smart grid. Smart grid, as you know, is used in the electricity generation, smart power and utility, smart communication. Smart city is another initiative where IoT will be, required. Smart cars, robotics, and stuff like that. And these are the areas of usage where the proliferation of number of devices, if you look at today in 2020, we have 9.9 billion devices which are IoT enabled, but the non-IoT enabled devices are more than that, around 11.3. But look at the figures of 2025. 21.5 billion devices are expected to be connected through IoT. So whichever I have shown you earlier, the kind of devices, and only half of them, approximately half of them will be non-IoT devices. So the growth of non-IoT devices is negligible, almost nothing. But look at the growth of IoT devices. So this is a game changer, and there is opportunity for each one of us. If you look at the size and of the market, and the factors can be impact on the global economy, services, infrastructure, and sensors and devices. The IIoT market by 2020 will be $110 billion, which is a phenomenal growth. And impact on global economy by 2030 is $14.2 trillion. If you look at Indian economy today is $2.8 trillion. So it is going to be, the IoT itself is going to be almost more than 3 times of what rather 4 times of the Indian economy in size. And that by 2021, and by the CAGR is around 7.3%. CAGR is nothing but compound annual growth rate. Then this is the scenario in India. So India, what we are expecting is 1.3 billion IoT devices are going to be there by 2020. The US dollar, by value, it will be around $9 billion. 120 IoT organizations, or we say startups, non-startups altogether, who will be working on this IoT space. It is expected. These figures are all from NASSCOM. As you know, NASSCOM is the National Association for Computers, companies. So, and then investment will be around $60 million. Leading verticals for IoT will be utilities and manufacturing, as I already shared earlier. Utilities is the power space, and manufacturing is, it can be automotive, non-automotive, both. And investments planned by Government of India for 100 smart cities. So this is a government initiative which is going to be around $1 billion. So this is a scope in India. And this is what we are expecting, these are all Indian figures. Sorry, this is a worldwide figure. And each segment wise, vehicles, home, offices, factories, retail investment environments, work sites, human health and fitness, logistics and navigation, public health services, all these segments. What is the proliferation of the IoT devices, or maybe IoT as a value? 3.9 trillion to 11.1 trillion by 2025. exciting figures. Look at Indian GDP growth. Currently, we are on, I told you, we are on $2.8 trillion. We're on 2020. And by 2023, we will be around 4.3. We'll cross Japan by 2025 or 6 or 7, approximately around that, as per expectation. It may be faster now, post-COVID. And then we will be at number 3. Currently, we are at number 4. This is what we are expecting. And obviously, digital transformation and IoT will play a huge role in this expansion. They will be helping us in growing faster. IIoT in automotive, since I belong from automotive industry, it is one of my responsibility to share with you how automotive industry is going to grow. So whether it is facilitating cars with ecosystem to provide features on real-time applications. So we have the devices with sensors and environment. Then we have the connectivity space, and then we have the software-based protocols where the dashboards and the analytics and other things will be working upon. These can be combined. So IoT is not single-handedly going to transform the business. It will also combine with artificial intelligence, augmented reality and virtual reality, wearables and robotics. All these 4 technologies along with IoT will going to be transforming the entire auto space. So whether we talk about connected cars, whether we talk about process optimization and new business models, all will be handled through this ecosystem. And these are some of the examples. So say for an example, asset management and maintenance, factory-wide performance management system. So in factories, we try to measure the productivity, the quality, the safety, the defects, the human efficiency. All these things can be tracked by these IoT devices and IoT systems. Also, we have asset tracking like the machines, their health parameters, when the machine can go down, when the machine can go up, when the machine needs maintenance. All these things can be tracked through this. So this is a value stream mapping for the entire auto industry, starting from the ancillary to a product company to the entire ecosystem. So look at this situation where IoT will be impacting more is manufacturing, where smart factory is there, in the telematics solution where logistics is there. So telematics is basically talking about the transportation and tracking of the vehicles. So one vehicle is moving from the supplier to and going to the OEMs. It can track where is it, how far it has gone, how long it will take to reach the OEM space or the gate of the person, when the person is expected to receive the material. All these things are done through a telematic solution. And the third area is connected cars, where the cars can talk with each other. They can avoid the collision, they can avoid accident, they can look at driver behaviors, they can look at many other stuff through the IoT devices. This is the visibility of a smart manufacturing and smart supply chain, starting from your receiving to the supplies, to receiving, to replenishment, to toolings, to quality control, maintenance, production, and shipping. The entire process, as I told you, will be done through a MES platform. MES is nothing but manufacturing execution system, which is actually a subset of the IoT and industrial IoT part, which basically does the advanced planning and advanced optimization for your planning processes. And this is the IoT architecture for any of the plants, where in the baseline we have the sensors and the actuators which collects the data. Then you have the SCADAs and PLCs, which are the machines from where the information is going to come to us. Then you have manufacturing operations management system, which is nothing but the MES layer I just talked to you like that, which looks about my planning, scheduling, tracking, and all these other activities. Then I have the ERP system, whether it is SAP, Oracle, or Ramco, or any other ERP application. And finally, I have the BI, or the business intelligence layer, which is nothing but the dashboard where I can see the the imported reports of all the activities which are going on. So this is basically the 5-layered architecture in terms of IoT. Some of the perspectives I just wanted to share here on IoT projects, some of the advantages. So basically, IoT or digital is a new normal. The board members or the top management awareness and interest is extremely important. Investor has to drive and for the smart enterprise. It cannot happen that the IT people are only talking about, I want to have a smart enterprise. The investors and the stakeholders have to drive this area. Customer expectation has to be there. So customer also have to drive the requirement of IoT. Technology has to be available. Many times technologies are not available. And also one more important thing is the user and consumer experience is very, very important. Apart from that, competitive advantage has to be there. Otherwise, I will not invest in IoT technologies. It has to be low cost of operation. Many times what happens is the technology cost does not give me the right return of investment. So if I need some returns on investment, it does not suffice to that. So this is very, very important. There are many challenges starting from skills, starting from return on investment, industry specific use cases, function specific use cases, user awareness, adoption, and budgets and training, and blah, blah, blah. This is a government initiative if you see. So far we were talking about industry and consumer IoT and stuff like that. What is government talking about? Government has 9 pillars of digital India, so which they're talking about continuously, which are nothing but government to citizen initiatives. And these 9 pillars are actually continuously working under Ministry of IT, Ministry of Planning, and Niti Aayog and other people are actually working on this. Then there is an initiative called Skill India, which is talking about improving the skills of the people. And then we have Make in India, which is nothing talking about Atmanirbhar Bharat and making everything in India. And finally, the initiative is Samarth Udyog. What is Samarth Udyog? It is nothing but Industry 4.0. So government also has an initiative called Samarth Udyog, and they invest money through Niti Aayog and the banks and stuff like that. People who open startups in IoT, or they want new business ventures, they help also in getting orders from the foreign markets and the exports market. This is a summary slide. Let me summarize what I have talked very fast in the last 40 or 30, 35 minutes. One is 11 technologies I shared in the beginning will disrupt the world by 2030. IoT growth will outgrow economic growth in all the countries. Penetration of IoT devices will grow 15 to 20% year on year in India starting from this year itself. Automotive, hospitality, retail, aviation will be the leading sectors for growth in IoT. These are the sectors where IoT penetration will be maximum. Future of IoT is great in India in coming years. Jobs in IoT as a technology will increase by many folds in coming years. IoT clubbed with advanced analytics, robotics, big data. These three technologies will disrupt the entire industry, as I shared earlier. Industry 4.0 will be the key change for driver, global competitiveness, and sustainability. And I told you about the government initiatives so far. And then IoT is the future. I now open the floor for questions and answers. Thank you. Divyanshi, any questions from anyone? It may happen that everybody has understood everything, or maybe people haven't understood anything. There can be two possibilities.
Sure. I think so. There are some questions, something on Facebook as well. So let me just
Sure, sure. Please let me know.
people were commenting there.
It's a pretty vast subject, so I wanted to capture all the aspects and all the facets so that the students can understand what is going on and how to look at the career options. What will be the growth rate of Geo organization and its advancement? My dear, I don't know exactly. Mr. Suhan has asked this question, but looks to be, if you ask me on a uh, just for an understanding point of view, it should be around 20% year on year. So any investments, any collaboration with Geo will definitely yield a lot of benefits, because Geo is going into OTT space, they are going into social space, they are going already in the mobility space, they are coming into digital television, they are coming into uh, you know social collaboration, they are coming up with platforms for collaboration and communication. So many things are going to come up Geo as a platform. So obviously the growth is expected to be at least 20% year on year, if not more.
Sure. So I think we have more comments that people have left on Facebook rather than questions. So
Okay.
though it was very, so you rightly said it was a topic which had a lot of things to consume. So I think, so everyone, in case you have any questions, I think we'll just give you another 2 minutes or so. If you could ask more questions, you could write in the chat section, or you could also unmute yourself and ask a question now. I think we're okay with that as well. Or in case you also have any, if you don't have questions, but if you have anything to say to Porno,
Anything.
so that is also, I'm sure he'll be looking.
Questions, comments, suggestions, remarks, queries, anything is fine. Or you want some details on something, let me know. How to become big data developer. Okay. K. Rakshita Shenoy. See, basically, you are in the right hands at this point of time. NIIT is the right place to guide you, but still I'm guiding you since I am the speaker today. There are courses available in the internet, but primarily for a big data developer, you need to know statistics a bit. People who already have knowledge on statistics or mathematics will also do. I think for them, the being a big data developer will be much easier, because big data talks about three subjects predominantly, rather four subjects. One is about data management. Second is about data administration and data massaging. Third about data, the designing about the data, and fourth is, data science. So for learning all these subjects, it will be always better to be from a mathematics or a statistics background. If not, you have to slightly struggle a bit for learning big data as a technology. Big data talks about, as I told already, there are four subjects: data management, data administration, massaging, and then data science, and also data archival and architecture. So all these areas need, some bit of knowledge on mathematics as well, and also logical reasoning. So people who are also doing development at this point of time, they can also become big data developers or big data, data scientists. So it's a big subject again. Big data as such is a technology, but under this technology there will be different roles. So data designer will be one role, data massager will be one role. People who do the ELT processes, as you know, extract, transform, and load, they are called data massagers or data administrators. Then data scientists will be another role. I think different roles are there. Please look at where you are comfortable and where you are, really strong, and you should focus upon that area. So it's a technology, but you need to focus on which area you want to go at ahead, and then accordingly you should map your career options for that. Which language or framework we should learn for industry 4.0? Very good question. What is the work for data scientist? Okay, data scientist has many things to do. Say for an example, data scientist has to know what to do with the data. So for an example, uh, there are two subjects in this data scientist. One is data and other is science. So say for an example, I'll give an example, then you will understand better. uh, Suppose I have 5 years data of my inventory means stock. Now suddenly my management says, tell me which stock is always going for shortfall, and I don't have timely replenishment of that stock. So the data science, what he will do is he will make some data models. Data models are generally made through statistical algorithms, which are available in the big data tools itself. It is also available in R and Python kind of languages. After making that data model, he will feed the data into the data model and churn out the data, large amount of data, 5 years or 6 years, then find out the what kind of data is throwing out with the logic. So the data model will consist of example, which are the inventories which go for shortfall, which are the SKUs, how they are going, which pattern, which season, which month, which weeks, by which person this failure is happening. So all this type of the logic will be catered by them. So they knows the business logic, they know the functional logic, they know the process, they also know the data. A data scientist is a very senior role, which generally has to have all these skill sets. Again, let me repeat: business logic, process logic, functional logic, and also data science. I mean the data modeling part. If the person knows all these things, he can become a very good data scientist. So it needs at least 10 to 12 years of experience to become a good data scientist. But yes, to start with, people can just start with the last part, which is the science part, which is preparing data models under guidance of the right functional experts or process experts or the business experts. That is how a data scientist role shapes up. Thank you for this question, by the way. It's a good question. Anybody, anything else in Facebook or in chat?
I don't see any more questions coming from. So, guys, any more questions? Last call.
Oh, sorry, one guy also asked another question, Rahul. Which language or framework we should learn for Industry 4.0? Okay, so for Industry 4.0, there are many platforms available. You can develop softwares on .NET, Java, or nowadays a lot of platforms are also available. Open sources are available in the market. You can develop on these platforms. But as I said, data IoT is just again a technology. It needs a lot of backup technology. Say for an example, you need to have advanced analytics in place. You need to have AI, ML, artificial intelligence, and machine learning along with IoT. Then only IoT will make sense. You need to have the data capturing system, so which is data collection units, sensor-based technologies. Machine learning is required to understand the machine level data or the machine coding. So I think you need to have a lot of expertise. So IoT as a subject needs different technology skills. It's not one single person can do everything. Somebody is very good in analytics, they can do analytical job. Somebody will be very good in AI or machine learning, they will do machine learning job. Somebody can be a good data scientist, they can do data science job post the data is captured into the the platforms. So I think different people have to play different roles. You need to find out where you want to play in IoT. You just become a platform developer there, then .NET, Java, open sources are available. You can just become one of the developers. You can start developing IoT applications. But for that, machine level code learning is also important. So please find out in the internet or Google that what kind of machine level courses are available. I think all you can talk with your NIT faculties. They can also help you in this.
Great. We have one more question.
I can work with Python and also with Arduino programming HMI interface. Yes, you can. Python is basically, as you know, data science tool. It does data modeling and stuff like that. As I told earlier, R or Python both doing the same thing. And many tools nowadays are coming with by default Python interfaces, so you need not to have separate Python interface. And Arduino is again basically for human machine interface systems. I was just talking about machine learning and stuff like that, machine level codes and something. So this can also be worked upon. I think it's a good combination. Yeah. Can these help in Industry 4.0? Yes. See, again, let me tell you one thing. Industry 4.0 is a concept or a platform. Under this platform, there are several technologies. You need to know development. You need to know AI. AI programming. You need to know machine learning. You need to know big data. You need to know advanced analytics. So there are many such subjects apart from development. Development is just one part, but there are other things also. So look at where you are comfortable and which you want to pursue. Accordingly, please pursue your career, because these are not simple like web page development. I mean, you just have a HTML, just start typing the HTML codes and you develop a web page. It's not so simple. It needs a lot of layers. Some people are very good in understanding the machine level codes. They are good at machine level code understanding. They only do that part. Some people are good at making the analytics on the IoT platform. They are good in analytics. Some people are just doing the developing the IoT platform, which fetches the data from the DCUs, or data collection units, and sends it to the network through the network ports to the servers. or some people are very good in mobile applications. They develop mobile applications for the IoT outputs. So I think you have to decide which where you are comfortable, and accordingly you should start focusing on that area. It's again not a single technology or single platform where you can work. There are multiple technologies which combine into a subject called IoT. We have some 5-7 minutes still pending.
Sure, guys. Do we have any more questions or any parting words? Thank you, remarks, anything for Porno? If you want to say anything, please.
Okay. Two questions have come again. One is, can this help me in Industry 4.0? I have already explained you, yes, any technology can work. It doesn't matter at all. People nowadays develop on, Ubuntu, or there is one more Java component. I forgot the name. There's one more Java component. I think any platform will work. It doesn't matter at all. Only thing you have to see which are the platforms which connects to all types of machine. I think you should know what kind of machines are there which can be connected into the platform. Say, for an example, it can be rotary based machine, it can be industry 3.0 compliant machine, it can be a PLC machine, it can be a CNC machine, it can be a robotics based machine, it may have a RS-232 port, it can have a RJ45 port, it can have a USB port, it can have a micro USB port. Machines have different ports. If your software can read the data from that port, and basically before that port you need to also have the Raspberry Pi kind of devices which actually extract the data and sends it to the platform. So if your platform can read all this type of port data, I think this technology can work. It can work. There is no challenge in that. No issues. For job opinion, you need to look at the requirements in Naukri.com or some other portals, or you can talk with your NIT faculty. They can help you in finding out the right technology opportunities in the market. I believe one thing very clearly. Whatever you learn, you should understand the requirement in the market. Anything you learn, if the requirement is not there and you are just something learning, it becomes too much I will say academic in nature. It does not apply in the job market. If you focus on learning the right skills and the right technologies, I think that's the way you should go ahead. So my only suggestion to all of you is, please look at technologies which are required in the market. So I am not a job expert, but look at talk to the job experts. They can help you in suggesting, or who are the technology job experts, they can help you that which kind of tools are required in the market where the need is there. Example, I told you Java, Ubuntu, .NET. These technologies have a lot of requirements in the market. So I mean, there is no doubt to that. One question is there: what qualification needed to become data scientist? I told you already. If you have statistics in your graduation or mathematics, I think this will help. Beyond that, nothing is required to become a data scientist. Yes, but over a period of time, you need to know the business process, as I told you, the functional process, the the business process, functional process, and also the mm, the way the function works. So my point is very clear. You need to actually to become a good data scientist. Okay, let me give you the recipe. To become a good data scientist, you should work at least in sales and marketing for few years in manufacturing, few years in marketing. If you work in these kind of functions, or you can work in IT and talk with all these functions on a continuous basis, also you can learn the functions, you can become a very good data scientist, and obviously backed up by your mathematical skills and statistical skills. This is fundamental. Without that, you cannot become a good data scientist. But if you have the functional knowledge, the process knowledge, the business knowledge, I think becoming a data scientist becomes much more easier, because you know what data comes, what data is required. So if the input and output is very clear, the process becomes very easy. As you know, it's IPO cycle, correct? Input, process, and output. So if the input is very, very clear, you know what is coming inside the process and what is expected out of the process, the internal process becomes very, very easy to understand. Hope I have answered your question. Okay, Divyanshi, over to you.
I think there are a lot of questions. I'm glad these guys could actually ask a few questions and could take out.
Yeah, the questions are more, specific to their career, because that's extremely important for all of them since they're all in the learning phase. So I think I'll suggest there are technology specialists in the market who can guide them better, or there are career guides who knows this space much better than what I know, because I am from the industry. I can talk about the industrial requirements, but those people can guide them from an overall market point of view. So I think they should talk with those technology specialists and the career specialists who can guide them better in terms of what technology to learn, where to go, which functions are important, and all this stuff will be clear to them much better.
Sure, that's a great input. Maybe we could do a follow-up session with a personality like that also for the students who attended this session particularly. On this note, I would just like to thank you, Porno. Thank you so much for taking out time, and I'm sure this was a very beneficial session for everyone who attended this, either on Zoom or Facebook, wherever these guys were. But thank you so much. We would love to maybe do more sessions like this later. If you'll be available, we'll definitely reach out to you.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you to all of you. And thanks for attending this session. And in case you have more questions, you could write on our Facebook page, and we would try to, respond to those. And we would just keep bringing more of these sessions with you. And just before we close this, if you would write a feedback and let us know about this session, it will help us plan more sessions like this, and we would know what you would really need, or whatever your requirements are. So it's always helpful to get feedback, and just to facilitate it, we have a contest running on Facebook under Future Ready Fest, and it says Kar Future Unlock. So if you would give us a feedback, you could also win an Amazon Echo Dot. Please go ahead.
That's
and
amazing.
interact. Thank you.
Tell me one thing. I can send you the deck also. You can share it with the students. Just let me know where to send, because it's a slightly heavy deck. I'll share the deck with you, the PPT.
Sure.
So you can share it with the students as well.
You could share it via a link with me, and we could make sure that whoever attended this, we could send it out to them. It will be helpful.
Okay, fine. No issues.
Okay.
I'll send you.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much, Varno. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye. See you.